Welcome back to the Adventures of the Monad, which will look at life, the universe, and everything. My name is Kazim Kamal-ur-Rahim. In this series, I ask the question, where do we come from, who are we, and where are we going? I post one presentation a week. Please subscribe to my website and hit the bell icon for notifications of future videos. You can also leave comments and join in forum discussions on my website. In the last presentation, I walked you through the process by which the causal lotus was activated by the monad. Prior to this, we examined the causal envelope and noted that it has a permanent atom and two molecular levels. What the last presentation did was to open up that permanent atom, give it a name, a shape, and describe, at a very rudimentary level, its function. The stages of opening of the causal lotus are now examined again specifically from the perspective of the initiations that are taken. Further initiations are also described briefly. To open this presentation, I present a diagram that outlines the journey taken by the human monad from the time it causalizes to its entry into the fifth kingdom. Upon entry into the human kingdom, let us assume a monad has a consciousness level of 200. This level is achieved because of the monad's prior activation of its three lowest chakras in the animal kingdom. These chakras are the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. Great. So we have a ball rolling. We are now in the human kingdom, and only glory lies before us, right? Well, that's the theory. But in practice, we are overwhelmed by a series of negative influences, and we can drop our consciousness level well below 200. This sorry state of affairs may last for several thousand incarnations. The diagram represents the 5 stages of human development. In the left-hand column, you can see the planes of existence, from the physical to the upper spiritual. Along the bottom are the sequential activations of the chakras. Also on the x-axis, in grey, you can see when the first 4 initiations take place. This and the other diagrams are available on my website for closer examination. I am going to represent this another way shortly. The main intention is to show the relationship between subjective and objective consciousness. The diagonal band in the diagram represents the monad's subjective consciousness. Everything below this band is objective. Everything above the band represents our superconsciousness. The yellow-faced icons represent your waking consciousness. The green faces are the monad's position in the triad. This is always located in a permanent atom or molecule. It should be noted that the monad's position in the triad is always above the level of objective consciousness. In this manner, it maintains a level of tension that drives evolution. This is a similar situation to the development of subjective consciousness half a plane ahead of objective consciousness. As various chakras are activated, so are the petals of the causal lotus. These have been discussed in the last presentation in some detail. What I wish to point out here is that the activation of the petals of the causal lotus happens in 3 stages. It starts with the awakening of the petal. It then goes on to activate more fully, and then finally it is fully active. This is indicated in the diagram. Of interest here is when the petal begins to unfold, to continue with the flower theme. The knowledge petal starts to activate at the boundary between the young and the community soul. At the boundary between the community and the cultured soul, the first initiation takes place, I1. The petal is fully active now. The focus of the monad has moved from the lower molecular levels of the emotional body to the higher ones. It reaches full activation when the soul becomes cultured. The unity petal, which you could say is linked to the feelings of love, begins to become active halfway through the focus of consciousness in the emotional body. It is fully active in the cultured soul and reaches its peak in the compassionate soul. The will petals begin to activate at I1. They become fully active at I2, and they reach full activation at I3. Lastly, at I2, the central petal begins to activate. It is fully active by the third initiation, I3. It reaches its zenith at the fourth initiation, I4. As this happens, the monad passes into the fifth kingdom. It should be noted that the process of activating the petals of the causal lotus are gradual and occur over several incarnations per petal. The chakras, which themselves are present in all the three lower envelopes of incarnation, unfold the lotus in 4 phases. These have already been outlined. When we are presented with a diagram of our chakras, they are numbered sequentially from the bottom. However, this is not the order that they are activated when the time is right. The base, sacral, and solar plexus activate when we are still in the third, the animal kingdom. This is why they are said to represent our animal nature. In the human kingdom, our first and biggest challenge is to try and tame and then finally transmute these lower chakras. If you had to pronounce an overriding goal for a monad in the fourth kingdom, it is to activate the atoms of its second triad and advance its consciousness into the fifth kingdom. A major part of this process is linked to the activation and proper use of its chakras. This is linked to the activation of the causal lotus as well. Therefore, energy first flows from the second, the sacral chakra, to the fifth, the throat chakra. As this occurs, the knowledge petal is activated. This signals the monad taking the first initiation, I1. The triadic center that is activated by the unfoldment is the 47-1 permanent atom in the causal body. I wish to state here that this atom is activated, not fully conscious yet. When the solar plexus chakra relinquishes its hold over our emotions, energy is drawn up into the heart chakra. This signals the second initiation, I2. At this time, the 46-1 permanent atom located in the unity body is activated. The next transfer of energy is not focused from one chakra to another, but all 5 lower chakras. These are synthesized into a single unit, and they transfer their energy to the brow or ajna chakra. This occurs at the third initiation, I3. The movement of energy begins to activate the 45-4 permanent molecule in the lower spiritual triad. Last, but certainly not least, the base chakra, also called the Kundalini, transfers energy to the crown chakra. This happens at the fourth initiation, I4. This stimulates the permanent atom 45-1 on the third triad. This, believe it or not, is another lotus, called, you guessed it, the spiritual lotus. This is where the monad rests between incarnations of the planet, not just itself. We have talked about the relationship between the 4 higher chakras, the petals of the Causal Lotus, and the activation of the higher triads. The activation of the chakras must occur in the same order as the activation of the triad centers. Therefore, the order does not start from the heart 4 and work upwards. It starts at the throat 5, then goes to the heart 4, then to the brow 6, and finally to the crown 7. I have spoken a lot about the topic of initiation, but what exactly goes on? Let's start with a definition. Initiation means that one's level of consciousness has risen to a higher plane and transcends the lower plane. So the next obvious question is, how many initiations are there to take? The answer lies in the question of how many planes of matter are there. The answer is 49. Therefore, there are 49 initiations a monad must take to return home. Where is home? Well, for starters, it is on the first plane, where its journey first began. Ultimately, its home must be in the antiverse. But quite literally, God alone knows what that truly is. The first 4 initiations occur while the monad is passing through the 4th, the human kingdom. This happens when we learn to master our physical, etheric, emotional, mental, and causal bodies. Our consciousness is unaware of the first 2 initiations. However, the 3rd initiation is a big deal, as the persona is transcended by the soul. That is a fancy way of saying that the higher and lower mental bodies unite. So let me state once again where and when these transitions occur. I1 occurs at a consciousness level of 400. This happens when the monad transitions from the community stage to the cultured stage. This physically involves the move of the monad's focus from the lower molecular levels in the emotional body to the higher ones. Why do I talk exclusively about the emotional body? The reason is that the monad has its focus seated in the permanent 48-1 emotional atom. That is not to say that it does not have any mental activity in its higher envelope. It does. It is just that its thought life is governed by desire rather than reason. This changes, but not yet. What the monad has achieved at I1 is that it has significantly greater control over its physical etheric body. It has now largely overcome its animalistic behavior. That is the theory anyway. Practical results may differ widely. I2 occurs at 500. The monad now moves from the permanent emotional atom, 48-1, to the permanent mental molecule, 47-4. The monad moves from its cultured phase to its compassionate phase. The thought life of the monad has now changed dramatically. No longer is it ruled by the tyranny of its emotions and desires. Situations are observed, analyzed, and rational decisions taken. This is not a clean-cut transition. When I say that the monad is now in control of its emotions, I mean that it is largely in control of its emotional body and nature. The mother-in-law factor does rear its head from time to time. But this is just to remind the monad of the heady days when it swam around in a pool of desire and self-pity. I3 occurs at 600. When the monad moves from the permanent mental molecule 47-4 to the permanent mental atom 47-1. Remember, this is located in the Causal Lotus. To achieve this mighty feat of transcendence, the monad has had to gain significant control over its persona. I wish to point out here that the persona is transcended, not discarded. After all, the persona is part of and made from the same substance as the soul. Together they make up 100% of you. The acquisition of causal consciousness, I3, gives the monad continuity of consciousness between incarnations and objective etheric, emotional, mental, and causal consciousness. I4 is another real milestone in the evolution of the monad. After taking this initiation, the monad enters the fifth kingdom, which is given a nominal rating of 700. It moves its focus from the permanent mental atom 47.1 to the permanent unity atom 46.1. Objective unity consciousness is acquired. This allows the monad to have mastery over the physical, etheric, emotional, and mental planes. When I say mental planes, I mean all of them. I have already mentioned that the fourth initiation, I4, is the hardest a monad will ever take. The reason for this is because the persona ego is completely discarded. I, however, have always been at pains to point out that the loss of the first self does not mean the loss of your identity. However, to become a second self and join the realms of collective consciousness, the monad must first ditch its own personal identity, which it has so carefully crafted as it passed through the human kingdom. This must be really tough. You spend all this time trying to find out who you really are, only to give this identity away. Clearly, there must be a serious advantage to this course of action. Joining a soul group gives the monad access to a greater body of wisdom, love, and power than it could ever access by itself. There is one sobering point to note before you strip off and dash for the exit. To enter the fifth kingdom, you have to have completely discharged all your karma. Ponder that the next time you have a negative thought. In the book of Revelations, found in the New Testament in chapter 20, verses 4 to 6, there is a symbolic representation of the fourth initiation. They, in brackets enlightened people, came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. This unit of time happens to be the average time between incarnations for an arhat. This is one name given to a monad functioning on the fourth plane of matter. Note I say the fourth plane and not the fourth kingdom. The fourth kingdom does not extend past the third plane of matter. This is the mental plane. The fifth kingdom exists on the fourth plane of matter. This is the unity plane. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This refers to the fact that unenlightened people sleep most of the time between incarnations. This is the first resurrection. This statement actually refers to the entry into the fifth kingdom. Blessed are those that have a part in the first resurrection. The second death, the death of the causal body, has no power over them, but they will reign with him for 1,000 years. In other words, until their next incarnation. The monad's entire perception of reality completely changes when a new level of consciousness is acquired. In the case of unity consciousness, all sense of separateness and duality disappear. With a rapid increase in spiritual consciousness, the concept of matter loses all significance. I have suddenly used the term spiritual consciousness. People use this all the time to refer to some type of consciousness other than mental consciousness. I wish to clarify in my use of this term that I'm referring to a level of consciousness that resides in a second envelope. This envelope is provided to the monad by the protogonos, our second guardian angel. Here we store our spiritual knowledge, whatever that amounts to. So I'm using the term spiritual consciousness as the next level above soul consciousness. With spirit consciousness, we are entering the realms of the third triad. When we fully embed in it and move to the left in our triadic chain, we enter the lower monadic body. Now consciousness itself becomes almost meaningless. What is left then? Energy. This is beyond what we can even imagine. However, all things will come to pass in their own time and in divine law and order. Now I wish to go on and discuss 8 types of initiation. I have discussed the first 4 initiations in moderate detail. I present here a table that shows all the 8 initiations a monad takes as it passes through the solar system. Although the number of initiations listed is 8, only 7 of them are taken within the solar system. The 8th occurs when the monad leaves the cosmic physical kingdom and enters the cosmic emotional kingdom. This kingdom starts on the 8th plane of matter. The 4th column states where objective consciousness begins to develop, and the next column lists what planes have been mastered. The 6th column lists the stages of development the monad passes through. I have focused on the ones that matter to us, as I have discussed what consciousness means and how it evolves through the human kingdom. The last column on the right gives a title to the monad at each level of consciousness above 400. There is no big deal to these designations, but you would be surprised how obsessed students of esoterics are about where they may be on this path. Inevitably, they inflate their grades, but that is human nature, lower human nature. So a quick run through. At I1, the monad is said to have entered the path. The path to what? The path to enlightenment, of course. At I2, the grade title of probationary disciple is given. What this basically means is that you are being watched. Forget about police surveillance cameras. The hierarchy are watching you. They are assessing your suitability to take your 3rd initiation and become an accepted disciple. This is where I chuckle, as many students of esoterics think that they are already disciples. Dream on. At I4, the monad is termed an Arhat. No great shakes. It is just a name, and I use it for convenience. It is assumed when you reach this stage in the game, you automatically join the hierarchy. This is not the case, as at this stage the monad can choose from one of 7 paths, and only one leads to a career in the diplomatic service. In fact, very few monads take this path. They are not stupid. Could you imagine having to deal with us idiots back in the 4th kingdom? At I5, the rank of master is reached. This is an exalted station, and those masters that have walked and talked amongst us are members of the hierarchy. They are very few in number. I have come across numerous individuals who claim to be ascended masters. Trust me, one thing a master would never do is identify themselves with a persona. They just are. They are not that. So use that as a good yardstick to gauge people's claims of specialness. The next level I want to jump to is I7. You see here, there are 3 titles given. These are the 3 high offices of state that human monads can rise to. They are titles of positions that are held by a monad for a certain period of time. The one of interest to most is that of the world teacher, the Bodhisattva. This is our headmaster. This monad sets our curriculum and monitors our exam results. The previous holder of this title was Siddhartha Gautama, aka the Lord Buddha. When he ascended to the 8th plane, he became the Buddha, and that office went to his chief disciple, the Lord Maitreya, aka the Christ. That ends my current delve into human consciousness in all its glories. In my next presentation, I wish to recap on the theme of this presentation and relate it to the story of the character of Jesus as he is portrayed in the Gospels. I then go on to take a look at another major topic, space and time. If you wish to read a transcript of the presentation or leave a comment, links to my website are in the description box below. Thank you.